Hi, my name's Bob Greenyer and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. Okay, so I was going to take you through a view on the SEM and EDS of this steel vibrator plate from Ryushin Omasa and this palladium coated vibrator plate, and we will get to that. However, as I was setting off half an hour ago, giving myself half an hour to prepare the slides today before the presentation, or rather the things that I wanted to talk about, I got sent an email in response to something that I'd sent maybe last night or first thing this morning, I think it was last night, to the Russian community. And basically there was a debate about what strange radiation is and blah blah blah. So I asked them to look at these two videos that I've presented in the past. One is this one, Device and a Method for Generating and Manipulating Coherent Matter Waves, Max Planck Society 1999. And the other one was my second presentation that I made at Assisi and on the September the 4th, 2021. And this is Coherent Matter Traveling Wave Beams and their possible role in making strange radiation. Now, I've looked through these videos and I have not found the 3-tier strange radiation exotic vacuum object basic EVO that I predicted was the cause of some of the strike marks on the Hutchison fracture sample. And if you remember, this was this little unusually damaged piece of aluminum from John Hutchison, and on it we had at least 3 different tiers that seemed to be quantizations of the lower quantization level and linked together. And so I predicted this structure, and if you recall in the recent review of the Vega Valley Eastern Plateau, we actually found what looks like perfect analogies of these things frozen in what I'm calling carbonite or otherwise on the Vega Valley Eastern Plateau. And so that was extremely rewarding. Now, I don't know if the person that sent me the reply earlier today to my request, and I think his name, I think he just signed off. What did he sign off as? Maybe I can do a direct reply and find out it is. I don't even know who it is. So here's my problem. But this is so raw, but it's so wonderful at the same time. So anyway, he sent me a PDF from 1995, and I'm not sure I can believe what he has sent me. It's in Russian, and so I'm actually going to take you through the very rough process I use to smash a document rapidly into something that I can work with, and I literally did that in the 3 minutes before I went live. And so I've only read the first few paragraphs, so we're gonna read it together. And this isn't exactly what was planned for today, and so maybe I'll take this recording and cut it in two eventually to just have the analysis separate. But how is everybody, and can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Let me know. Oh, hi, Kim. That's my beautiful wife. Yeah, so Kim's referring to my glasses. My glasses broke a couple of days ago, so I went around all of the pharmacies and found myself some glasses that I can wear so I can actually see what I'm doing. So she's drawing everyone's attention to my lovely pink inside glasses. Excellent thought. Brilliant. Okay, so this might be very special. So yeah, let me just, great guys, great, fantastic. Okay, I can see that you can sit here. Let me just switch over from this. Okay, so what it is, it's this document, which I will get up for you. I'm just going to zoom to page level here, and I thought, okay, this is interesting. And why did I find this interesting? Well, because what we have at the top of this kind of weird type of structure, which is kind of like some sort of a sphere going into a point, is this torus. And the interesting thing about this torus is that it appears to be a torus of tori. And each of the tori have tori on them. Okay, so this is very, very interesting. Like I say, I have no idea whether they followed my... I mean, I've sent them other videos and I've talked about it in presentations to them in other presentations. And obviously they have access to YouTube and they can look around the channel. And I don't know whether they looked at the most recent videos. But anyway, this is what they sent, and it's here. And I kind of was going down here and going, why did they send it? Why did they send it to me? And then I'm looking over here on the right, and what do I see? I see a black ring with a field structure around it. And then below that, I see these black rings turned through 90 degrees and arranged multiply. In this case, they've chosen 6. And arranged those 6 around another ring with a different field structure around it. And then what they've done is they've taken these black rings that have their own field structure and linked together in a group of 6 with their own field structure en masse. And they've taken that and they've looped that in a group of 6 around this loop with its own field structure. Well, isn't that a thing? Isn't that a thing? Right, what you're seeing right there is a pictographic representation of what I derived from physically looking at the strike marks on the Hutchison fracture sample. You know, and I got accused of seeing faces in clouds. But that's what I saw, and that's the only thing that I could use to explain it. And here we have something which is loops in a loop in a loop. Loops of loops of loops. There we go. Isn't that a thing? So and then, you know, they've got this triangle here, and then this triangle of triangles, and this triangle of triangles of triangles towards infinity. And as I said at the time, I said that I couldn't see a state upon which this would stop clustering. It would go cluster to cluster, cluster, and it was as above, so below, fractal, fractal, fractal. This is literally mind-boggling to me. This document's from 1995, but I think because I'm seeing dates that are in there from earlier, I can see it in the Russian, that I think this work is actually from the Soviet period. This is mind-boggling. I'm going to live do this for you. So what I've done is I loaded this in when I got into the office after I set up the streaming so I could make sure I started on time, right? And I used, this is Acrobat Pro here. And with Acrobat Pro, you can switch to edit PDF, and I've already done it, but you can set the OCR language to Russian, and it will do its best job of grabbing these characters and converting them into Russian. And then what you can do is you can go up to File, Export to Microsoft Word, okay? For those that can't see that, that's what I'm doing there. And then when you do that, if you've got Microsoft Word loaded, it will load up automatically into Microsoft Word here. And then in Microsoft Word, you can go to the Review tab on Microsoft Word and go to Translate and then Translate Document to Russian to English. Now, it doesn't do a perfect translation, but I had literally zero time. I had no idea that I would get this document. I had no idea that it would be so incredibly exciting to me. And so I've hijacked this presentation. I've hijacked my own presentation, my party. I'll cry if I want to. Right. So here we go. This is the translation. So I'm going to read it with you, and I have no idea what it says. Okay, I'm going to read it with you, and I'm going to put the PDF over on the right, so that we can see the images. You can actually set it up to send the images over as well, but it ends up sometimes making a complete mess of it. So we're gonna close that, and we're going to go over there so we can see the image that it's referring to. Okay, so I said to Corky, we're going to have a bit of a surprise on this because it's as much of a surprise to me as it is to anyone else. Okay, so, oh dear. All right, so let's see what we've got here. This is beautiful. This is just wonderful. Okay, I even love the name. It's called Bagel Game. And you know what I call, this is bagel and pretzel, so, you know. Okay, all right. So this is QE Zaverbilis. I don't know. Anyway, hopefully everyone can read what I am reading here. Right, some things whose existence can neither be proven nor considered probable, but which are precisely because of the fact that the pious and conscientious people treat them as something really existing, a little closer to the possibility to exist and to be born. Okay, so this is G. Hess. It's a quote from something called The Bead Game. Okay, I love this quote. It's poorly translated, but I can get the feeling from it. Some things whose existence can neither be proven nor considered probable, but which are precisely because of the fact that the pious and conscientious people treat them as something really existing, a little closer to the... You can get the sense that this quote is saying that there's something that people couldn't prove or would not consider possible, but because someone thinks that they are that there is something really existing going on, they become closer to a possibility and then are born. This for me is exactly the journey I've had in whatever we're about to discover with you together right now, because it's like this revelation to me of this structure that came in a dream in the beginning of 2018 with this torus with the thing going in, and then believing that that was possibly the cause of the things that were going on the Hutchison sample, and then deriving and publishing that document on in February 2020, and then seeing it in these last weeks in physical manifestations is just incredible. And this for me, that is it. It's seek and thou shalt find. It is, you don't find if you don't look. Anyway, all right. I'm already really excited about what this might be. About 7 years ago, in one of the Moscow cellars, so 7 years ago. So if this was in 1995, then 100% this document, the origins of this object here, were from the Soviet period. About 7 years ago, in one of the Moscow cellars where the mysterious organization was located. What mysterious organization? Where a mysterious organization... I love this document! Whose employees themselves did not really know where it came from and where it then What? Hold on. About 7 years ago, in one of the Moscow cellars where a mysterious organization was located, whose employees themselves did not really know where it came from and where it then disappeared, I saw a real ghost. But the ghost is not in the spirit of England. Well, that's probably a bad translation, I don't know. With oops and sad sighs, etc. But quite with a temporary, scientifically called electromagnetic phantom. It was like this. It was like that. On the laboratory stage, there was an ingenious coil, a wire spiral with a diameter of about 1 centimetre, twisted into another spiral with a diameter of about 5... 1... Okay, all right. 1 is a order of 2 or 3 orders of magnitude. Well, one micro, so it's 3 orders of magnitude bigger than the base sort of evos we are seeing that you saw in the structures. 5 is like a next order of magnitude, and then rolled into a donut torus with a diameter of about 30. Okay, so of low frequency, with a diameter of about 30 centimeters, something of a low frequency, and above it, of a low frequency of the number of maybe the rings around the ring. Okay. And above it, and a height of about 0.5 meter, a sensor of the environment was fixed to register weak variable magnetic fields, the so-called microteslomometer. The generator was turned on, and a bright sine wave was visible on the EC wound of the cathode ray tube of the microteslomet, indicating that the alternating current with a frequency of about 30, maybe 30 hertz, I guess, but not from... 30 something. I will have to do the translation properly. This is where it gets a bit difficult. But not from the mains clock. Okay, so maybe, 30 is probably 30 hertz because it's talking about mains frequency, which is obviously relatively similar to 30, was visible. Okay, bad translation. Totoi 50 GU. I'll have to do this translation properly. Following along the carcass generates a new magnetic field on its axis of change. If the sensor was driven away from the axis of the coil, then the signal weakened, and therefore was actually created by the magnetic field of the circular current flowing through the coil, and not by any permanent parasitic aiming at the microteslomet. Then the generator was disconnected from the network, and the coil from the generator. What do you think? The bright sine wave on the screen of the cathode ray tube of the microtesla did not disappear, and neither did, something hasn't changed at all. And as expected, the signal weakened if the sensor was moved away from the axis of the coil. Naturally, the first thing I suspected was some elementary cheating. But having checked the circuit, I was convinced that the current would not go through the coil in any way. No sources of alternating magnetic field with a non-standard frequency. It wasn't nearby. Okay, all right. So he's saying there was no parasitic induction, I guess. Where does the signal come from? To be sure, there's some high-end cheating here, I thought. However, it was explained to me that in front of me was an electromagnetic fan volume. That is a kind of ghost of a traumatic field. Oh my God. I described an Evo at a C.I.C in 2016 as I was preparing my presentation as a Dyson fan. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know what I'm reading here. Okay, this is just too weird for me. You see, I sometimes feel I'm cheating because I don't know whether I've remote viewed into what I'm going to read in the future, or whether anyway, that's an aside. Like I say, sometimes it feels too easy. That is a kind of ghost of a electromagnetic field. I don't know what's going on here. It's bad translation. No one can explain the essence of this idea to me. They say, look and be surprised. Nay, then I heard about the fantastic things. Descat, if you know, carefully remove the coil itself from the table, then not only will the fan volume not disappear, but will remain in the same place where it was born. And the creature can gradually weakening something day. However, I was warned that the experience does not always succeed, and the electromagnetic ghost itself turns out to be quite timid. It can be destroyed by an This is exactly what Shishkin was describing. He was saying you can set up a torsion field, it will stay in the environment, it will be locked to its space-time, right? So with all of the motion of all of the parts of the galaxy in all of the galaxies in the universe, and all of the relative motions of the bodies in the celestial solar system, when you create a torsion field, it's locked into the space-time with all that movement in place. And the only way you can get rid of it is to discharge. This has to be something that Shishkin knows. This has to be. I'm going to have to ask him about it. However, I was warned the experience does not always succeed, and the electromagnetic ghost itself turns out to be quite timid. It can be destroyed by an electrical discharge produced by the licks, and you can just wipe off the table with your hand. I couldn't stand it. Without a noticeable shrugging of the shoulders and retaining the benevolent smile, although I really wanted to twist my finger at the temple cord. Really bad translation. I'm going to get this professionally translated in the next few days. I will do that. I retreated, not waiting for the end of the demonstration of what cannot be, because it can never be. And I still deeply regret that I did not show a little more patience and curiosity then. Geometry of electromagnetism. I didn't believe in the existence of a tromagnetic phantom, although it, if I may say so about the invisible ghost, is its own. With my eyes, however, toroidal emitters had already interested me as a possible sources of asymmetric electromagnetic fields. I assumed that such fields should have increased biological activity. See Chemistry and Life, 1980. Number 12, pp 81 to 87. And I wanted to test this assumption experimentally. PhD candidate of Physical and Mathematical Sciences, Nevetsky Corporation at the Institute of Theoretical Problems of the Academy of Sciences of the USSR to calculate what should be the configuration of the electromagnetic. Okay, so I think what's going on here, the principle of constructing the simplest two-dimensional fractal, a structure in which its largest indistinguishable... Yes! 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 Electromagnetic fields are toroidal emitters of different degrees of complexity. A first order torus, 1 torus. A second order torus, 2 torus. And a third order torus, 3 electric field, red, magnetic, green. Okay, so what we are talking about there is in the original document, and it is exactly my 3-tier exotic vacuum object structure, which is literally an object in the vacuum, which is exotic. You couldn't make it up. So this is your first tier, right? This is your strike mark. These are your yin yangs that you see on the fracture sample of John Hutchison. This is the 2-tier one, which I showed you, which was these quanta at this scale around a loop, making a quanta of D4D ratio. Okay, and then we found that these structures were this big, and what we found was it was 48 round the outside in that particular large scale structure. However, in what we saw on the Vega Valley Eastern Plateau, we saw multiple structures of different levels of structure around in the loop, and maybe different tiering of structures. Okay. And then they are saying it's as above, so below, up to infinity, which is exactly my conclusion. Okay. Oh dear. Okay, so there we go. So this is the structure. It is as I predicted it. And when I say predicted, it was from physical observation under a Dynalite Edge, a $1,500 handheld microscope, and one small Hutchison sample, and bothering to look. I love this document. Okay, so electric and magnetic fields of spiral toroidal emitters are second order spirals, third order spirals, in spirals of third order and higher orders of formation of electromagnetic phantoms. Okay, so here, so this is how you, I guess, how you making the structure. And I have to say, what I'm looking at here looks very similar to some of the structures John Hutchison has been building with Nancy Lazarian. Now, I don't know where he's getting this from, but they have been doing this, which is just interesting in its own right. I don't know where he's downloading his information from. Right, okay. John, if you're out there, Nancy, hello. All right. Okay. This is, as I said before, it's a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. Okay. The volume of which is possible to build the toroidal, I guess it's meant to be, emitters of any complexity. Therefore, for convenience, we will call such a ring a torus of the first order, or first torus, that is just conducting rings on synchronously flows, alternating current equally often. You can assemble from, well, this definitely needs more work on the translation. Or a 2 torus. Ring-shaped magician filament filled outside change, but electric field, oh dear, it's completely fallen apart, the translation here. This happens, okay? This is why translation isn't quite so easy. Filament fields created by radiation carriers. It makes no sense to drive these something here. They are published in blah, 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 and high quality due from the symmetry of the Maxwell equations that describe the electric Javas, see, blah, 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 blah. If there is a current flowing through a ring-shaped wire, then there is a circle around this one. All the lines of force of which are closed to themselves, have no beginning or end, and are therefore depicted without arrows. Okay. I guess is the blue ones, I guess, maybe. The blue ones. I see. Okay. So the field just gets locked and it just continues to spin. Have no beginnings or end and therefore depicted without arrows. The strength of magnetic field H is in an axial vector. If the current changes its direction with a frequency W, then an alternating magnetic field will be observed on the axis of the ring. and in this plane electromagnetic radiation with a wavelength of blah 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 will propagate in all directions, where c is the growth of the light in the vacuum, the speed of the light in the vacuum. Such a ring can be considered a primary element. Oh god. Okay, so we have this diagram here, I guess. And I always promise to say no maths, but mutual orientation of vectors E blah 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 in spiral toroidal emitters, provided their size is much smaller than the wavelength. Okay, so that's maybe why you would need a low frequency. In the spirals of the first and second orders, okay, and that's the H bar. Okay. And in the fourth order spirals, okay, I'm going to have to look at this document a little bit. Characters, density, flow, electromagnetic. Okay, I'm going to have a look at this document a little bit longer offline. Like I say, this is real time. Okay. All of the lines of force of which are closed to themselves have no beginning or end, and therefore depicted without arrows. Okay, all right. Such a ring can be considered a primary element. The volume from which it is possible to build the roidal emitters of any complete. Okay, so I guess this may be coming from here. I don't know. Okay, all right. Let's see we've got down here. Does it say here? Torus are flowing in phase with magnetic field. Tora drew attention to a very interesting feature of such complex torus. During the transition from a torus of one order to a torus of the next order, the external magnetic field H is replaced each time by an electric field E, and vice versa, forming after the leading blah 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 blah. So there's a formula, I guess. Okay, so H goes to E, goes to H, goes to E, goes to H, goes to E, goes to H, goes to E, goes to H. Okay. Can increase from 0 to infinity, and each time the transition from H to E and from E dot dot to E can be made by completely identical substitutions into equations that merge these fields. In other words, consistency, the same type of complexity of distant geometric structures and the configuration of the electromagnetic fields generated by them. As a result of the annihilation of the electron-positron pair, the rest mass is converted into electromagnetic radiation. But since the electron and positron have spin s, as well as magnetic and electric dipole moments m and ij, in a certain way oriented relative to each other, then where the annihilation occurred, there is still chargeless electromagnetic field having dimension, energy, flux, density. Okay, that sounds exciting. Are they saying that there's some capture of energy from the vacuum? I don't know. Is that, because positron, electron, and conversion into, I don't know. Ooh, okay. There is a mathematical recurrence or where it repeats itself, that shows a clear connection between Maxwell's equations and pure geometry. Namely, that Maxwell, I don't know whether I should be reading down. I should probably be reading down here, up to here. Let's try that. Sorry, this is very messy. Close to themselves like lines of force in the magnet, but are depicted by arrows. The length of the strength of the electric field E is a polar vector. Now, if you add a torus of the following order from 2 torus to 3 torus, then inside the one torus forming it will be a frequency W omega maybe of and disappear ring-shaped magnetic field inside is a cellular electric field with a phase shift of and outside the torus is again magnetic field. Okay, so yes, I think I should have read that first. But then basically they're saying there's a conversion of magnetic to electric to magnetic to electric. Okay. Okay, such an N torus has one very interesting feature. An arbitrarily small part of it is perfect, but is indistinguishable from an arbitrarily large part of it. Such structures themselves, i.e. structures in which the part is always equal to the whole, are called fractal and spontaneously arise in the course of processes of very different physical nature, whether it is a lightning discharge or the formation of the crown of a tree. As above, so below. Okay, the principle of constructing the simplest two-dimensional fractal is shown in figure 2. Figure 2, that one there. Okay. Three-dimensional fractals of the linear lightning channel or the crown of the tree are also constructed, but N torus is apparently the only possible three-dimensional that a fractal fills a space without residue in such a way that there are no inhomogeneities or selected directions. I didn't know that. That's interesting. N torus is apparently the only possible three-dimensional a fractal fills a space without residue in such a way that there are no inhomogeneities or select in any one given direction, I guess. Maxwell gives the go-ahead. All this, so to speak, is pure theory. Really? All this is, so to speak, is pure theory? And in practice, we can make a toroidal emitter of any order only by twisting it from one whole piece of wire, the ends of which are connected to the source. No, you can make them in Vega experiments. The ends of which are connected to the source of the transmitted current. Therefore, the electric magnetic field of the torus of each of the successive orders will be superimposed on the torus field of the previous order. So, a wire spiral folded into a 2-tor will create a field that combines the features of the fields of 1 and 2, from which are connected to each other. In this regard, such a spiral of whiskers is thought to be called 1-2-tor, accordingly made of road drags. Sorry, this is just terrible when it's not done properly, the translation. Sorry, apologies. Will create an electromagnetic field that combines the features of the fields of 1, 2, and 3 toruses, and we're going to call it a 1, 2, 3, and so on. The coil that I was shown, and in which the spectre of an electromagnetic field appeared, was just a 1, 2, 3 tor, and the variables E ... and H could arise in it with closed lines of force depicted in figure 36. Figure 36? Figure 36? Maybe figure 3? I think maybe figure 3. Closed field lines? Or not? There isn't any more figures, so I think it might be referring to... Oh, maybe here. I don't know. I think it's this one here. Figure 3. This solves the mystery of electromagnetic phantom. According to the law of electromagnetic induction, the decrease in H is expected by an increase in E, and the mouth which the phase shifted plus or minus half. In the conventional electromagnetic wave, the vectors E and H are perpendicular to each other, and therefore in a straight perpendicular plane in which electromagnetic energy is transferred, the density of the flow of which, that is the amount of energy the time carried over the unit area, blah, 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 pointing vector. Unlike blah, 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 from each other, only an object and a reflection in a mirror can exist in 4 forms, 2 of which are completely different because they cannot be accommodated with each other, even by reflection in a mirror. Indeed, a 1, 2, 3 torus can be made in 2 fundamentally different ways, by folding the wire spiral into the left, or the right spiral into the right. Okay, so this is the pseudomagnetic monopoles clustering into bigger and bigger clusters of 2 types. The left rotation and the right rotation. Okay, or by folding the left spiral into the right supertor, or the first spiral into the left of the supertor. The distinction between the left and left and left right, as well as right and right left. Okay, so there's 4 different versions. Supertors can be made at the first attempt to make them out of wire. Left, right, and right, left. 1, 2, 3 tools, as if they themselves tend to curl up from the left and right. Okay, I need to think about that a bit more. In contrast to the left, and right, 1, 2, 3 tools. Actively resist their creation. Okay. Literally breaking out of their hands. That is, trying to give themselves a configuration with minimum... maybe that surface, I don't know, free energy. If a supertor of small distance is connected to a low frequency oscillator, then in comparison with the length of the electromagnetic waves emitted by it, the emitter itself can be considered almost pointwise. Thus, the size of the supertor which I saw in the basement referred to the wavelength of the example. But in the same way as the dilution of the molecule, it is the size of the diameter of the ping pong ball. Okay, all right, fine. Okay, so this is actually a very, very small torus of tori. and it's about the size of a ping pong ball. So I guess what he's saying that this thing which looks quite large is actually quite small. This is really, really small. It's about the size of a ping pong ball. And the 30 hertz gives a frequency where the wavelength is larger than the size of this ping pong ball shaped overall structure, and that means that it acts as a point source effectively. If the phase shift is such that the vectors E and H will have the same mutual orientation, in a electromagnetic wave, the energy supplied to the supertor will be routinely dissipated, but if their mutual orientation as determined by the geometry of the emitter turns out to be the opposite, then there will be no dissipation of energy. Pointing century will curl up into a ring, close itself on itself. As a result, the energy supplied to the supertor will accumulate and acquire the ability to exist autonomously. In addition to it no longer needs an emitter, which is in the form of an electronic chromatic phantom, like an invisible ball hole. An invisible ball hole. Does he mean black hole? Does he mean ball lightning? I don't know. We definitely need a better translation than ball hole. What I saw in the basement and thought was some kind of hoax could really happen, and was a demonstration of an amazing physical fact. As they say, never say no once. Fields, molecules, stars. The most surprising thing about this story was that I didn't see the author of the experiment at the time of the demonstration, nor could I find it, and I couldn't find a single publication on the subject. They may object to me, they say. The work was classified. Hell with the two. So this is, they don't know the author, they don't know what company made it, they don't know where it came from, they don't know where it went to. And it was classified. But to hell with it, he's reporting on it. Only what was, and I guess this is one of those moments where it's after the Cold War, and he's publishing this in 1995 or 1994 or whatever, and so it's like, who cares? Let's just get it out there. They may object to me. They say the work was classified. Hell with the two. Only what is given money is secreted for, and money is given only for what is even remotely similar to the truth. And what does a ghost look like, even if it's electromagnetic? In all cases, I've repeatedly told physicists about this effect, who think quite open-mindedly. So what? My story didn't even meet with a polite interest. At one time, I really wanted to reproduce and study the effect of the electromagnetic phantom myself. However, this idea was quickly abandoned precisely because of the lack of money needed for a serious production of the work. All I did was to make not so many supertors, one of which you can see in this photo. Okay, so this is actually his own supertor that he's made. In the photo at the beginning of the article, it's actually a Go cooking, not even super, but super torus. That is a spiral torus of the fourth order. 1, 2, 3, 4. So he's got spirals on a spiral on a spiral on a spiral. Okay, it's a torus on a torus on a torus on a. Okay, fine. All right, I get you. For what purposes did I increase the order of the torus? The idea was quite clear. With a certain configuration of the emitter, most likely left or right, two mutually perpendicular, self-supporting, recalcitrant ring flows of electromagnetic energy, figure 4C. 1, 2, 3, 4. This, I guess, maybe. With the structure of an element of the should arise in it, formed during the annihilation of electron-positron pair. Under more detail about this, you can read in my article published in the Russian Chemical Journal 1994. According to my thoughts, such an electromagnetic phantom should have not only increased stability, but also the ability to draw from the external environment the very energy thanks to which N.A. Kozyrev stars shine. Okay. So in my view, this would be sucking in relic neutrinos, in my view. And maybe electrons and positrons, and doing stuff with them. And which serves as the driving force of all processes of self-organization in society. The configuration of electromagnetic fields that arise in a super-Tor is very similar to the configuration of fields created to hold plasma in stellarators. Installations for studying thermonuclear fusion. Yes, I think he probably is. And when I showed the super-Tor to a familiar biologist and asked him what it looked like, he exclaimed, "Yes, this is the same model as DNA molecules." That's the kind of game of Bublis Tora. Well, isn't that a thing? Isn't that a thing? What a beautiful thing to be sent today. I don't know how this journey can get any better. I don't know how, and I'm so happy that it came at this moment, and I got to share it with you and hijack my own presentation. But okay, I'm going to see what your comments are. I'm going to have a drink as well. My kefir. So what they have in Eastern Europe is like slightly fermented milk with strawberry stuff in it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to read your comments, and then we'll go and do what we were meant to be doing today. And I've got a bit of a snozzle, so I'm going to blow my nose. I got a cold. Some things whose existence can neither be proven nor considered probable, but which are precisely because of the fact that the pious and conscientious people treat them as something really existing, a little closer to the possibility to exist and to be born. Jesus, I wish that was a better translation. I'm not taking the Lord's name in vain. Okay, right. Okay. So I'm going to go from the top, see if you said any interesting questions. All right, okay, go for it. I can honestly say that this is very similar to the head. You might have seen John and Nancy playing with this Toro, which is in coils, head bracket. And anyway, there we go. So that, I don't know whether it's saying black hole or ball lightning at that point. Need a better translation. It would appear that he's saying this is showing the principles of self-organization. I didn't realize, and I learned it with you at the real time, that the fractal torus is the only structure that fills all of space-time, possibly, in one continuous self-growing structure. So that's a nice thing. But the fact that this can produce a electromagnetic, which one would imagine it's a gravito-electromagnetic structure, which is self-sustaining and persistent. This certainly would explain some of the observations of Bogdanovich and others where they've observed these structures persistently existing over long periods of time and grabbing energy from the environment. And so that would explain a lot of the structures, and it is literally what we actually see happening in the Vega system, and you can see the aftermath, which shows a fractal nature. Faces in clouds, Corky says. Me? I literally painted that once. What, you went up in the clouds and painted faces? You know, there's the Vault B at the Padmaswami temple when I was launching Red Pill, and I referred to it just around that time. And apparently it has a mantra that only a very, very, very pious person can sing and get the right tones to be able to open the vault door B. It can only be opened by sound waves, and it needs to be sung in a very precise way, but with intention that only an extremely pious yogi can do. And the problem is to find the right yogi. The yogi go out off into the forest, and they basically become unable to communicate with normal people when they get to the right level of pious ability in order to be able to unlock the door of the vault, because it has no keys, it has no observable mechanisms. It's in the ancient writings. So it's this is one of these problems. You can't get into the temple vault without having the person, and the person you can't really interact with them when the level in which they could sing the mantra in the way that is necessary to unlock the vault. What is the knowledge behind that door? Yeah, you'll see that this is effectively static electricity, but to the max. It might be electromagnetic. In Russian, when it's writing, you'll see actually if we go to the original Russian is very makes a very great use of the hyphen at the end of sentences. And when you do these very rough translations, you end up with part broken words like this. So you can obviously have elec and then tromagnetism. So it may well be that. So like I say, I just need to spend a bit of time doing a proper translation, and it'll be even more exciting, I should imagine, because it'll make even more sense. But what we already got out there, certainly what I already got out there, is I wasn't completely mad when I had my initial vision in beginning of 2018, and then that propagated through to being able to understand what I saw on the Hutchison fracture sample, and the only possible thing that would explain it is this torre, and to the nth degree, because there was clearly signs of a level below or above that, and then we've seen it since. Yeah, Stephen B. Halls. I said when I was referring to the 3-tier basic, and I said basic because it's fractal as above, so below. I said that 3-tier structure is a wheel within a wheel within a wheel. Yeah, that song. Round like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on a never spinning reel. Like a snowball down a mountain or a carousel balloon, the world is like an apple running rings around the moon. That one. Well, a black Evo is definitely a phantom, no doubt about it. Stephen, Corky is saying, so phantoms equals Evos. Hi, Crypto Alchemist. I'm going to show you this beautiful image here. I'm going to drop this on the page here. This for me is just pure magic. This is a drawing of the 3-tier Evo. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me pull that up. I'll put that up in a separate window. Here. I got it on here. Duff nut. So yeah, I mean, these were the images taken using the dynalite of the John Hutchison structure. I don't know if you can see it here, but here is the one of the low level tori. Okay, so you can see the ring and the spot. This is the Ra, according to the Egyptians. So we've got a Ra, we've got a Ra, we've got a Ra, we've got a Ra Ra Ra. That's one level. And so here I showed that the radius here is about 40 something micrometers. And then I showed that there are, I can get this one in focus. There are yin yangs, so, or as you might like to call them, an outie and an innie, an outie and an innie. So this is your charge separation. This is your outie and your innie. This is an innie. This is an outie. So they are your two versions of them. And then this is the next tier up. Okay, so this is a much bigger structure. And I think I've got a scale on that at some point. This is the same structure as here, but I've viewed it at a different angle. And you can see that it's a circular cut into the aluminum. And you can see the center going through the torus here is this sort of slug that goes through the center of the torus. Okay. And so I've got it in different levels of focus here. Focusing different focus pull. And note you can see this hexagonal structure around here roughly, or certainly polygonal. And so you can imagine that some of these substructures here at this tier are pulling material between the substructures in this kind of fashion. And at some point I've got the scale. Yeah, so the whole scale here is, this is 400 micron. So the other one was 40. This is 400. So this is like a whole order of magnitude bigger. And then above that, we have this much larger structure here, and I'm going through different levels of focus here. And you can see the sections here, and there was 48 sections around here. Okay, and they are pinched into the center. Okay. And you can see that in this case, this structure this was one rough estimate. So this is about 900 or whatever, I don't know, something microns across. And then I did some renders when I worked it out, and it looks like this. If I go like that, I can get it to play in sequence. Yeah. So you can see how it needs to be pinched as it comes into the center. The field structure needs to be pinched. And it is a 3-tier torus. So you have this torus goes into this torus, and this torus goes into this torus. And because the last one was 48, I made the other ones 48. So it's 48 or 48 for, you know, it's 48 here and there's 48 here. Okay. And so they've done 1, and then they've done 6, and then they've done 6 of 6. So it's the same story, but in a different way. This is actually, I guess, closer to some of the ones that we saw on the Vega Valley Eastern Plateau. Yeah, so it's a beautiful thing, and this is a split one where it's kind of come undone. Boink! Ends up as a spiral. And they could extend on. You just have this spiral continuing up. Okay. Yeah, I had no idea fractals would lead to this, but you know, when you see patterns at every scale, there had to have been some fractal structure underpinning it all. Yeah, magic carpet. Yeah. So Stephen B. Hall says, if this lets us wire up a home consciousness, we better also know how to make it go away with a bigger electric field. Yeah. Basically, Shishkin says when you set up these things, you just have a disruptive discharge, and it kind of resets the disorganization of everything. Borehole is not a thing. So funny. Yeah, I like this. All the effort to keep it secret. Someone publishes it and it gets ignored for 20 plus years anyway. Yeah, as I actually first said in 2017, this has no trouble keeping itself secret because it's so unbelievable. It's just so unbelievable. But what we have done with your help through this process is we've literally gone from not knowing anything to seeing the evidence on things to being able to predict what that would do, to have an experiment that creates the observables, and we've captured them on video, and then we've seen the things being created, the damage that they do, and the actual things that are left and their fragments, and everything is consistent. It's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And then you get this document. You get this document. It's just bonkers. Okay, I'm trying to go through your comments and then we'll go on to the more mundane thing. But actually, it's relevant. It's actually relevant what we're going to see. So it's great that Corky said DNA-ish as well, and of course that was the kicker at the end of the document. And what I was saying is that I believe that the DNA is both a transmitter and a receiver, and we know that it is because of the late Luc Montagnier, the guy that won the Nobel Prize for establishing the virus HIV, which led to a form of acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS. He actually recorded the signal coming from the DNA of the AIDS virus, was able to record that electromagnetic signal, send it to another lab, and then play that signal to a polymerized chain reaction reactor and reconstruct some of the AIDS, the HIV virus in that reactor. And so I have argued that when you know that, and the information can go maybe faster than light through the coherent condensate that pervades the entire universe, then you don't need to send DNA to another planet that is capable of supporting life. The message is already being bombarded onto that planet from the point it becomes able to support life. Then it will start assembling proteins and it will start assembling life. And so my prediction is that throughout the cosmos, there will be creatures that look fairly like us within the limits of the gravity and the local environment to support a structure of the same size. It might be bigger or smaller, but the design is a design that probably will be universal, just like chemistry will be universal within a certain pressure domain, and plasma physics will be universal, and exotic vacuum objects physics will be universal. So why not evolution? It will be received as a message, and it will be assembled, and that's it. It will be panspermia without anyone having to go anywhere. It's just the ontological intent of the universe. we might use EVOs to go to another planet in a distant solar system, turn up, and there's cows ready there, just eating grass. It might be a little bit weird. Yeah, always attached to the source, Corky. Consciousness is always attached to the source. I'm just trying to see if there's anything I missed. I like it, Corky. Torrid t-shirt. Yeah. It is a Mandarin segment. And guess what I have here? Oh dear. Gotta love mandarins. All right, I'll get on with what I was meant to be doing in a minute. I need a toilet break first, I think. You cannot imagine what this is like for me. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. Like I say, I don't know whether I'm cheating, and I do feel it's unfair sometimes because I don't know, but it's like I don't know whether I read this document because I knew it was going to be sent to me at some time in the future, and that meant that I could interpret what I saw on John Hutchison samples. I don't know. So, but anyway, I'm glad I recorded the history as it happened on YouTube, and it's just amazing I got this documented. It's a bit weird. It's just a bit weird. This is the sort of the moments in time when you think, am I really in a matrix? Have I done this all before? Yes, Gordon. It's the big torus spewing out matter into a space that forms what we know as this universe. There might be multiple universes within a much larger volume of nothing. We just haven't seen the light from those other universes. We can only see the light from the edge of our universe. No question. I don't actually know what APEX stands for. I should probably do. Well, I think we can agree that God is everything, and it is the intention. What's the best way to get up to speed on Bob Greenier's Evo investigation on the YouTube channel? I would probably look at everything from about beginning of 2018 onwards. Late 2017, 2018 onwards. Sorry, it's going to be a slog. Believe me, it was a lot of hard work. Speak to Stephen. He managed to do it. I don't wish it on anyone. Okay, so I'm going to take a pee break, and I'm going to finish peeling my Mandarin, which I used as a analogy for Evos in the past. In fact, it was around the time that I was coming up with the structure that you see on the page here, because if you can look at the segments there, they're kind of a bit like that. You know, it's kind of like an analogy. It was a leader into videos around that time. So, excuse me for a second. Okay, so I'm going to answer the Corky's question. How are the books coming along? Right, so I'm going to find a way to get to America. I think it's absolutely imperative that I can get to see John sooner rather than later. Obviously, I'm working now on doing some deep analysis into Hutchison samples. I'm going to get a macro rail, but we've probably got enough material to do the photo book with both the 50 megapixel 8K SEMs of various features on the Vega Valley, and also the color macro photography. So basically the book's done, and I think the analysis book of that, I think, I kind of go with the flow, and it's one thing to have had a prediction back in 2018 with the basic structure. If I'd have published something then, it would have been wrong. Firstly, the Vega Valley didn't even exist. Then to have been able to publish this structure here in the beginning of 2020, before the Vega Valley or the Vega experiments ever had existed, before the Valley was ever made, and predict that this would then cluster into a superstructure that would then form ball lightning. And then to have the Bogdanovich documents and so forth show how they could cluster, and that we'd already published similar prior to that. And then to actually now have the validation in physical form, and now to have this wonderful document, this bagel game document here, by this author, which we've got to credit this author here, Q.E. Zervabilis, for several reasons. One, the courage to publish something that he knew was classified, right? And to take the view that, well, they didn't pay me any money, and I guess he thought, well, all of the security apparatus has collapsed over the last few years, so I'm going to take my chances. Thank you. I don't know if you're still alive, Zervabilis, for I don't know whether you're still alive, but thank you also to the Russian person of the physics community that responded to my email that I sent early this morning, because this for me, it basically settles the argument, because it's something that classified Soviet research had developed, and it was based on Maxwell's equations, and it showed provably that it could create a self-sustaining electromagnetic structure, and it has all the hallmarks of an exotic vacuum object as described by Shishkin, and I've pre-described how these things exist and how you destroy them, and that is the same description that he was told when he was in this classified lab, is how you destroy these structures in free space by using a strong electrical discharge. And so this is what it is. So I think that the book that can go with the Vega Valley, I mean, the thing is, he says the limitation is you physically have to have terminals and connect it here. But what we're creating in the Vega Valley, if I actually pull up the structures there, if I go into this directory and I'm going to pull up the structure that we're referring to here. Let me just get that. So what I particularly like about this image here is it has the D4D ratio, and this was established by Bostic and Nardi in their 1980 paper, and it was seen in their earlier work on plasmoids. And you can see here that this is a 24 segment structure, and just like my predicted structure, it has to have the pinched insides. The field structure has to have the pinched insides. You can literally incredibly clearly see the pinched insides. And you can see that when the wave function of this structure collapsed, probably the iron that it is principally made from, the iron nuclei, it has to crystallize out, and you've got the crystal structure of iron, and the bits that weren't frozen in the carbonite, as I call it, to the carbon rich, it's basically glassy carbon. It's not crystal form in any shape or form carbon. So it prevented it from falling apart. But up here, it's prevented it from falling. Part of it was prevented from falling apart, in my view, and more of it, some of it was able to break off. So you actually get a section of the tori which is making up this tori. So these could actually be tori, and they're made into a tori, and that's made into a tori. So my view is that this is a 3-tier structure. Now, it might be that you've got 1, 2, 3, maybe 8 around the subsections of the 24 sections here, and then the tori are just basic tori at that level. But if you went into that particular structure, that might be tori of tori of tori, and it might be fractal. It's just that at this quantization level, we can only resolve at this type 2 micron level that by the time the matter that's compressed into here returns it into 3 space and gets its electrons back and forms a iron crystal, you actually see the section here, but it's enough so that you see the pinch in the middle, so you see the field separation, so you can clearly see that this is a torus that is making this torus. So this is a torus that's making this torus. So there we go. It would be nice if I had some system that I could go in at a higher resolution and maybe see some indentation in the structure of these parts. And then we have this sample, and because this is locked into place, we can look at it more. But yeah, so that is essentially what I believe what we are seeing in this thing here. And why is that not allowing me to come down? Why? Okay, there we go. Okay. Stephen, that would be awesome if you do. My immediate issue is to, that would be really awesome, Stephen. Thank you for the offer. We can talk about that another time. When I stayed near John before, it was pretty crazy expensive to stay in a really unpleasant place. Well, not really unpleasant. The grass was trimmed, and it was a basic motel, but yeah, and it just wasn't cheap, even being a basic motel. This is California for you, isn't it? Okay, so yeah, so we've gone from, in my view, a speculation which is supported by Maxwell theory, all the way through to seeing the physical aftermath of the collapse of the wave function of a structure that is structured in the way that he is talking. This classified former Soviet research was stating that self-sustaining electromagnetic and I would say gravitic phenomenon. Because you have to argue that if this was an electromagnetic structure that was self-sustaining, that if it stayed in place, then it's not got to be affected by gravity, and so forth. So I believe this is all part of this classified research, and it amazes me. I think that they were well beyond these type of structures in the Soviet research. I'm pretty certain, and I'm always astounded at how far ahead they are. Even way back in the 1980s and 90s, back in the 1980s rather. So yeah, wonderful. I mean, this is this is all the reward you could want for doing this 10 years of labour of love. It's all the reward you could want to go from nothing, having no idea how this system works, to literally seeing the aftermath. And it's these little beasties that are, you know, in the case of this sample here, by Henk, I don't know if you can see it here. Yeah, you've seen this one. This is the copper pipes. We literally have 10mm sections on multiple axes of spheres removed from this, which means the field structure had got to an intensity that was big enough to literally instantly eat. And we know it's not thermal because copper is like super thermally conductive, and it just slices it off like a laser. It just comes within the event horizon, and in that event horizon the matter gets collapsed. Okay. Okay, well, Stephen, what I'm going to do, right, because I think this is so important, that, like I said, this was completely unexpected that I'd be thrown this curveball half an hour before I came to the office. But I'm gonna dump this document directly onto the blog on remoteview.icu, and you can have a stab at the translation. I'll even try, maybe first thing tomorrow, I will grab all of the text, I'll remove all the hyphens and try and do a much better translation, and maybe I'll work with my colleague in New Zealand to put it into LaTeX, into OpenLeaf, and we'll remaster this document, and it's kind of like done. It's just done. This phenomenal science has a basis going all the way back to Maxwell, and you're creating persistent electromagnetic gravitic structures. And it is intimately connected with cold fusion. It's intimately connected with anti-gravitics, or I would say something that shields the action of gravity. And it's intimately connected with the Hutchison effect. It's just, these are all the same thing. Okay, I'm going to do the boring bit now, which is not so boring. I think we're going to look at the Palladium sample first. Now, to refresh people's memories, I looked at the Palladium, the other part of this Palladium sample from Ryushin Omasa, and the bit that's over here. I looked at that under the dynalite, and if you remember, I found a crystal structure. I found these vortical structures in this figure of 8 in this overall cardioid structure, and then when we looked in that, we had this chromium, which is quad carbon, and then magnesium, which is double carbon, and then carbon going into this diamond and nitrogen core, and it looked literally like a couple of a spiral galaxy pair, producing this overall figure of 8 structure on this sample. And that's what we know. But I had a quick look around, and there are what we can recognize now as rusty patches where the cavitation have gone through to the underlying steel. I think what we know, we can see when I show you in a minute, is that to get palladium, often if you want to coat some precious metals onto steel, you have to flash plate it with nickel. The nickel binds to the steel, and then the precious metal will bind to the nickel. So this is a way that you process it. Now, I wasn't told how he did the palladium coating. He said that was a secret, but I can see that it would be at least starting from a fairly standard way that you would plate a precious metal onto steel. And so there is things which we might expect in an environment that was created in that way. But one thing that did stick out in the short session, which I sent out the as it happened video for that earlier today, just chopping the time that it took to do the sampling for the images, we found this structure. And the structure I want to talk about by first referring to the work of Takaaki Matsumoto. So I'm going to pull up his paper, and the reason I'm referring to Takaaki Matsumoto's work here is that depending on what material you are using in your system that is creating itonic clusters, ball lightning, exotic vacuum object structures, you get spherical objects with a different morphology on the surface. So there's a whole bunch of them. You can download the book, all 310 megabytes of it, and you can see here. Sometimes it just looks like a ball of rubbish, detritus that's come together. Sometimes there's sort of a crystalline, more ordered structure to it. Sometimes there are balls within balls, and typically, and we've seen this before in our own work, you have a sphere that's half in, and so this is a subcluster coming to join the macro cluster in my view. And a lot of these experiments were done with lead. There's very good reasons for using lead, because if it fissions beyond it, fusions back, and so we can see these kind of different structures that appear out of his experiments. This is an exploded structure, another exploded structure. This is a falling apart structure, and you can see the yin-yang eddies on the surface of the structure here. And we've discussed these things at length in the past. Okay, so a lot more of these two clusters. You see these type of structures in the cosmos where you have these sort of how should we do it? Peanut shell type casings of structures of meteorites and stuff, and these are exploded clusters. Okay, so my point being is that you get these spheres, but depending on the material that goes in, that changes the kind of structure that you will see. Okay, now I've had a thought about these things recently, and having seen that a fragment of an overall cluster can then be found, and we've shown that this is the hollow structure. It might actually be, I want to put this on the record now, that this wasn't a pole of this overall structure. It might be that the transmutations within the structure produced gas at such an intense pressure that when the electromagnetic confinement collapsed, then the weakest part of the material returning to normal atoms failed, and it blew out, and the gas comes out, or the still nuclear reacting process matter comes out of the bit that breaks off. So it might just be that the first bit to break, like this part here, it just blew a hole. And the stuff comes out. Yeah, and this hasn't. It's like oh dear, hernia. It's like a hernia that's just come out. So we see this in our Omasa gas on indium, and we see the synthesized elements coming out that Omasa saw. Okay, so my point being is you'll see when we look at the palladium stuff. So I'm going to go and pick up the palladium now. Oh, it's just such a joy to be able to share that paper with you today. Okay, where are we? Here and here. Get my mouse controlling the right place. Okay, so I'm just going to skim through the live session. So this is how you see it on the microscope, and you can see the cavitation spots, which have led to some what looks like rust formation. I think we can probably agree that there is some rust going on there, but it isn't all that's going on. So we put it into the microscope, and these bubbles, you can see these hollow bubbles here, and you might say that these structures are of the order of a skin of an exotic vacuum object, but then they might be some gas bubbles that were synthesized. I don't know. Because this is plated and we haven't had the disclosure of how it was plated, it might be something to do with the plating process. So we can't be confident that necessarily that this was caused by only by the actual cavitation process because of the way that this is plated. But when I'm seeing the most interesting structures, it tends to be where we have the cavitation spot. So I think there might be some cross correlation, but you just really can't say. But rapidly I came across this structure here. And the reason I'm showing you the video here is because on the video we actually get the scales, and we also get the clearest view of it, because when I started taking some hard images of it, or I started to do some SEM of it, it turns out that these fragments around the outside are highly magnetic, and this is magnetizable and excitable, and the structures from the outside flew onto the top here. And so, but what I believe potentially, and now I can't exclude again because I don't know how this was produced. This structure may have been produced in the plating process of the vibrator plate, but it is at a cavitation kind of area spot, so it may be due to cavitation. And we know, it would seem from the work done by my colleague Alan Goldwater, that the structure with the iron-rich crenellated spheres had formed in an ultra experiment in multiple cases. Obviously, there's iron would either be synthesized in there or aggregated. Synthesized or aggregated, but for whatever reason, it's formed into this structure that seems to form in the Vega Valley, forms in natural ball lightning, forms in the event, it forms in all different things. And so if this does not look like the structure that we witnessed in all of those other systems that are made from iron, or are iron and oxygen with a smattering of carbon. Now, if I go in here, I actually scale this. I go in. Now, you can see I've gone in and this bit has jumped on top. Okay, so... and in fact, as I'm using the beam energy here, halfway through, when it does the next averaging, you'll see that it's jumped again. And so it made a mess of trying to capture images. Okay. Also, something that annoys me about this software is that they always have this panel showing you the progress of the image capture over the top of the actual thing that you want to capture, so it's a bit annoying. But I think I do a measurement here at some point. Let me just see if I can capture. Yeah, so basically it's 24 microns across one aspect, and basically it's a 24 micron diameter sphere across both aspects there, within the margin of error of my capturing. You can see on the outside there's a little bit of dimpling and stuff, so depending on where I'm choosing. But it's basic. This is of the order of the iron balls in that system, in the other systems where we've seen iron balls. But I go into the analysis in a little while. This is the backscatter. So, and I'm playing with the settings here. Okay. And so I look around, and to be honest, a lot of this to me does look like rust. And so for me, this is the most interesting thing, and that's what I spent a bit of time looking at. Okay, so I went in and did the analysis, and so I'm going to go and look at the analysis now. So this is just me taking the analysis and a line graph, and you can see me going across the line graph there. Okay, I'm just going to play that across there. All right, so I'm going to go into the Word document of that. And then something might just pop out. Let's have a look. Sorry, is there a problem? Can you not see me? Nada test. Nada visible. I don't know what that means. Can you not see me? Am I not? Was I not showing anything there? Was I not showing anything there? Okay, all right. Okay, so this is OHMA PD, and first up is this one, and I'm looking at the surface of the ball here. See you fine, just your face. Oh, you didn't see the video that I was talking about. Okay, all right. So here is the ball. Yes, okay, but okay, fine. All right, good, thank you. So I'm looking at the outside of the main part of the ball here. The reason I've chosen this side is because it seems the electron beam is coming from over here. Okay, you saw the shots fine. Excellent. Okay, good. Now, when we look at this, we see that this ball is 18.5% roughly of carbon, 54% oxygen, and 17% nickel. And by weight, that's 43% nickel and oxygen. So it's basically nickel, oxygen, and carbon. I suspect, because I'm seeing magnesium and chlorine in here, that this was an experiment where magnesium chloride was used. I actually have something over here, and this is from one of the tests we did in Japan, and I can see that this is copper chloride on here. Copper chloride was put into the cell. Just seeing if there's anything else up here. Yeah, okay, so... Okay, right. I can see here, this is from the tests in 2019 in Japan with the Omasa vibrator plate, and I can see here it's clearly written magnesium chloride. So I suspect that magnesium chloride was used in the experiment, and therefore what we are seeing here with this magnesium and chlorine in here is because of the magnesium chloride. Now it's not a massive amount in that overall solution, so it's interesting that we have even this relatively high percentage on here. So I would suggest that whatever caused this structure is doing some aggregation of material of ions in the solution. But it's this nickel and this carbon and oxygen, and the fact that it's basically nickel and oxygen with a little bit of carbon. This looks like, in my view, a nickel version of an EVO type structure, in the same way that the iron is one. And if that's the case, this is the first time that we've had the morphology of the collapsed wave function of a nickel version rather than iron version. And other things that Matsumoto principally did was things like cesium and lead. So and they have different morphology, is what I'm saying. So, and now I'm looking at these white fluffy detritus that seems to be all over this crack substance. And if we look at this again, we can ignore the magnesium and chlorine because it was in the experimental fluid. Okay. And we are seeing iron. I believe the iron here is coming, we can argue, is coming from the actual iron, from the cavitation process. Maybe it's ripped out. And we are seeing the same story with the 50% roughly of nickel and oxygen with a little bit of carbon. Okay, so I think that's what's going on there. And now we are looking at this flake of incrustation, which, as I was showing you, rust tends to grow parallel to the surface, and then it forms these flakes, and it's, I think, about 10 times the volume of the iron that it comes from. So let's have a look at that. What is that? Well, actually, okay, so it's got some palladium in there, by 3.7% by weight. So this is, I think, the surface of the original vibrator plate. And the palladium was put in there as a catalytic thing. And this is the type of plate that was used in 2012 to do the, as far as I understand it, the tritium remediation, or it was an advanced version. He might have used the steel one, but then moved on to the palladium. Okay, palladium coated. So again, we got over nearly 53% nickel there, 30% oxygen. So this is very, very consistent here. So, this structure might have come either from some electric focused during the plating process, or from the cavitation process. So I get a gut feeling it's probably from the cavitation process, but we can't be certain because we haven't tested it at every stage. Okay, and so we're getting the same story here. We can ignore the magnesium chlorine because that was part of the experiment. Iron and palladium and nickel, I believe, are all part of the structure. Oxygen is obviously in the water, but There we go. So that is that. And then I've done a line scan across here, and it's the same story. And here are the elements as you go across the surface of things. So as you come up the side there, we see this oxygen peak on this structure here. So this would be a magnetic structure, I believe. And it certainly seems to be when you look at what happened with the video during the live capture of the analysis. Okay. And then I've got another spot here on the top. And again, it's the same story. Very, very consistent data. Just have a look at the high resolution images. So here is a high resolution, and you can see that during the capture of this, there was some averaging on the structure when this blob moved around on the surface. So it's got some problems on the top. So the useful thing about that is, as I said, it shows that the structure is can get charged and would appear to become magnetic. And this is a similar thing to what we saw in the Vega Valley. Now, I would love to see this sliced in two. Are these hexagonal plates on here? I don't know. Is that a hexagonal plate? Are they interlacing structures in some way? I don't know. But it's certainly an interesting form. Here's another one, which is not so damaged, but it still has a collection of these parts on the top. Okay. So that for me is the OHMA PD plate SEM-EDS. Very quick review. No new elements, but it may be that if you're not driving for this for a very long time, and in this case, obviously the vibration's only going at 160 hertz. It doesn't focus the energy repeatedly at the same spot like happens in the work of LeClair and like the work of in ultra experiments where you are keeping the material in the same place and the sound driver is in the same place, and the same with Stringham and Stringham's work principally, but also with Thomas Claytor. And this was only running for 20 hours. So if you've got 179 cycles running for 20 hours, or you've got 1.7 megahertz running for several hours, which has the more cycles, and when one is not focusing it always on the same spot, it's less likely, in my view, to produce coherent matter, and less likely to produce an exotic vacuum object derived ball structure. And I believe that this may be possibly the first nickel oxygen structure of this type of self-organizing type system, and we've seen plenty of the iron and oxygen ones. Okay, so I'm now going to find the data for the steel. Now the steel is more interesting. Okay, so again, we had a live session which I've published, and what I did in this live session is I used the ability of the software to grab a few points, and you keep a rough location of them, and then I went through and had a look at those different points and so forth. Now this one for me was quite interesting because this is a figure of 8 with these overlapping circular splats, and they have a core to them, and on one side you've got material that seems to be coming out, and maybe it's going into the other one, so this looks a bit like a yin-yang structure. It's less dynamic than some of the ones we see. This obviously is a build-up of material, and this is with a hole in the middle, and this is a hole in the middle with a field of influence, but not so much a material building up, but it seems to be coming out of there. Okay. Okay. This little sort of ovoid type shape I thought was quite interesting. I don't know what it's trying to tell us, but it's quite interesting. We'll look at the SEM of that. This cavitation spot struck caught my eye because it has a main area, but the main area within it has little craters, and then around the big crater there's other little craters. So that you can see what's going on here quite clearly, that there is some variability in the point at which the resonance occurred. So there is a lot of resonance that occurred roughly in this big crater area, and then there was some where the resonance shifted a little bit, but held long enough to chew out other holes. And this is the difference between one that is a less extreme focused resonance than, for instance, LeClair's work, where it is very focused resonance. I like this one because we've seen similar type of structures on Ultra, where you get like 3 spots in a row with a gap in between them. And these would be the 2 peaks, and this would be the trough in the Ultra experiments. And the fact that these have the kind of darker elements here, and this is like removed material. I like the very, very defined edge here, and this boundary area, and what appears to be a deeper pit here. If you've ever been to the top of the waterfall, like it had the pleasure of walking across Angel Falls when it was in drought for 4 years, you get to see these holes in the top of the waterfall just before it falls, and what it is there's a little crevice, and in that crevice a little ball starts rotating around, and it gets a torus, and gets a toroidal motion as the water's going over the waterfall. It ends up gouging these big sort of bowls out with this movement, and when I see this I imagine something going on, but similar, but it's actually this extremely tight boundary around here, which I find is interesting. And if a crenellated sphere of some type was to form, this possibly would be the place I could imagine that it was born from. Okay, I'm going to need to blow my nose again, so excuse me. Otherwise I sound like I'm down the drain pipe. Just on the Vega Valley, my target is to have printable books available for people at ICCF 24. And now with this last paper, it's kind of like, it's done! Right? It's just very satisfying. Okay, so we'll look at the images later. Now, this area struck me really rather nice. There's a lot going on, but you've got your cyclone and your anticyclone of your yin-yang, but also you can see the sort of cardioid type overall shape. Again, the resonance is shifting around, so you've got cavitation areas. You could kind of think this like if you imagine this area, one's got the darker material on it and one's cleaner. So you see these sort of duality going on. However, a couple of aspects on this. If you can imagine you have a big storm like a hurricane, around a hurricane you often get tornadoes. And so you could imagine that these are tornadoes around the overall hurricane. And maybe something is going on similar when we get these overall figure of 8 structures forming, because they do seem to have some material in different areas that are different elements. Anyway, the particular interest to me are this little figure of 8 over here on this left hand side, and I might be able to pull up the image here after we've gone through the detailed images, because this has a triangle cut in it, and this has a triangle cut in it, and there's also another one that's not quite so clearly defined up here. And this is interesting to me because and there's another one over here actually, a triangle cut, because this is the type of structure that was observed by LeClair, and he said that this is due to the water crystal that's formed because of cavitation. And so there's that, and then also you have this vortical spiral here left in the cracked, probably carbon deposit on the top here. So there's a lot going on here. And then we will look in detail in a second, excuse me, at this kind of area. Now, this kind of looks like a vortical structure. It has a kind of hexagonal sort of overlay to its boundary. But it then has this curve in here and this curve in here. Now, what I might do live here with you is just to see what the scale of this and the two spiral arms are relative to the aluminium by Bin Zhen Huang from Taipei University Energy Department. Because I suspect that I don't know, we'll find out, that there might be some potential correlation. What I will say is that these bits that are coming out, these spiral bits, they do appear to be maybe in line with the brushing of the steel. And so it might just be that there's a start of a weak point here and a start of a weak point here, and that's why these cuts came. But I still find it's interesting that this seems to be spiraling around that way and this seems to be spiraling around this way. So this actually, the diameter of this is of the order of about 10 microns. Okay. Took a bunch of pictures here. Then I did a map. So actually, there's a lot of oxygen over here. And this is interesting because Bin Zhen Huang observed a lot of oxygen, and of course there's oxygen in water. And I do some close-ups. So now I found a few places. I can click on the buttons down here, these saved positions, and I can go back to the saved position. And I'm looking at this now with analysis, okay? And what we are seeing here is copper. And we're seeing copper and chlorine, silicon, nickel, chromium, iron. So I would expect, we've got oxygen in the water, but we know the system produces a lot of oxygen. We shouldn't have carbon in there, but the system produces a lot of carbon. Okay, we clearly got, I think the carbon is in this area over here. Maybe I highlight that in a minute. That's the copper. What am I highlighting? Yeah, the carbon. This is carbon deposit all around here, and it's carbon coming out of this pit and coming over here and joining this. Okay. Okay. So now the reason I find this interesting here is because we have copper here and chlorine, and if I look here, this is what was on the steel plate there. This is a sample of the water that was taken at 3 hours and 44 minutes from the vibrator plate of copper chloride. And we've got another sample here, 3 hours and 44 minutes. Now, this will go away at some point when I can afford it, or we can afford it. This is from the top, and this is from the top. These are both from the top of the device. Okay, and see if we have other elements in solution. Okay, so so the copper and chlorine here are to be expected. The silicon may come from the steel, but maybe not. But the abundance of carbon here, I believe, may be synthesized, and it might be a CNO type cycle, maybe starting with oxygen. I don't know whether that's possible, but anyway, yeah. It's open to the air, so there's nitrogen in there. Will be nitrogen dissolved. You can start with nitrogen 14. Okay, so that there I'm highlighting where well, I am if I'm showing you. I'm highlighting where the carbon is. Okay, so the carbon is in blue and the copper is in this yellow. Okay. I do something similar here, and I think we see the same story. Copper, nickel. Yeah, so the iron, chrome, nickel were almost certainly in the steel. So it's the abundance of carbon and oxygen. And we've, Binju and Huang observed this production of carbon and oxygen. It does seem to be the thing that gets produced the most. It is what we expect to be produced most from these yin-yang type structures. Okay. So nothing overly interesting there. We're going to have a look at the actual Word date document. So I started out thinking, you know, this may be just a really rather boring presentation to make tonight, and it turned out to be possibly, for me personally, one of the most interesting that I've ever had the pleasure to make in the context of the journey. Okay, so yes, yeah, I think it's just high carbon here that's really interesting. Of course, there could be carbon on the steel, and we can see it probably is, and there could be aggregation. What you can definitely say, though, is that if things like copper and if things like iron and chromium and nickel are found in the material afterwards, we can see clearly that material has been moved from these structures. So it could be due to that. Yeah, the oxygen is very, very clearly in the positions. The oxygen is blended into the carbon. One little blob of silicon went down there. Where's that? Is that there? Well, that's interesting. This is a hole which is four-sided, but in a pentagon. There's those two triangular holes. We'll look at those in the images directly. Okay, so is that there? Where did I sample that? Okay, so this has got the oxygen around those two spots. It's got the carbon around those two spots. Is that the same place? Is it the same place? No, it's not. It's over there. Okay. Iron's everywhere. This is a surprise. Nickel's everywhere. Right, so it's definitely in there. And copper's everywhere. Because it was in the solution. Close up's the same story. Well, this is interesting actually. So I did this close up, and then I did two spots on the close up. One on the ball that appears to be in the center of here, and one on the splodge here. Okay, and what do we see? Well, in that ball that we see in the center of this structure here, what do we see? We see sulfur. And what is sulfur? Sulfur is two oxygens. Okay. And interesting, there's no oxygen. Now, there shouldn't be any sulfur in here. What do we see on this ball or structure that's in the center of this bit? What do we see? We see, oh, there we go, we got sulfur again. Iron's in the material, chrome's in the material, chlorine was in the solution. Carbon may be synthesized, oxygen may be synthesized. Obviously, it's in the water. There may be carbon on there, but there shouldn't be sulfur. So, like we saw in the Omasa gas on the 10 yen coin, with the little balls going around and eating the oxygen off the surface of the copper oxide, and converting it into sulfur. 2 oxygen 16 goes to sulfur 32 with about, I don't know, 15 million electron volts, something like that. In the balls or blobs that are in the center of the area that's cut here and then cut here, there is a material which is containing sulfur. In fact, both of them contain sulfur. And what is the ratio? Very low nickel. Okay. Okay, this is our cavity pair. What do we see? Anything interesting? Nope. The usual subjects. This was our other one here. Again, nothing. Close up. So yeah, I'll publish all this data to the remoteview.icu link, and we may get more out of it. But there it is. I'm just going to show the images. I think the big win in the Palladium dataset was potentially the first collapsed coherent wave function of a nickel oxygen exotic vacuum object sphere. And I think the big win here is that in one of these cavitation areas, which if we look at the overall image, let's have a look at the overall image. Where's the overall image? Where's my overall image? Has it got it up here? Yeah, so in this overall image, it's this area over here. And in fact, I kind of wish that I'd looked at what the ball is in this one here. And we'll look at that on the big image. Because I suspect that that there might also be sulfur rich. And if that's the case, then we can see that there's fusion, in my view, going on within these areas. The oxygen from the water, 2 oxygen 16s, the most common isotope by far of oxygen, fusing to sulfur 32. Okay. Let's see if in the big image what we see in that structure. So let me go back. Okay. So where are the images for this? Did I save them? Oh yes, there they were. You see kind of the hexagonal structure here bleeding out, and this is mostly carbon and oxygen, and this is copper, and then we got the other structure here. This is our rather odd ovoid type shape, which is quite nice. I didn't do any SEM on this. Maybe I should have done. I would expect it to be probably glassy carbon oxygen type structure. These were probably copper fragments given what we know about what was in there. Here is this structure, which I'm calling the wandering vortex. Okay, it's cavitating out. Now I've seen that sulfur, I would predict maybe that this ball here would be containing sulfur. These two balls would be containing sulfur, and this would be containing sulfur. I didn't do any SEM on this bit, but I think we can predictably say that these are glassy carbon rich areas, and this is the gouge out. So this is the overall structure. So here is the area over here. So this is where the sulfur and sulfur bit was. Maybe, I don't know. I would be looking out for these bits at the bottom of the structure. So maybe this bit would be sulfur rich. Maybe this bit here would be sulfur rich. So maybe I'm gonna, when I've next got a session on the SEM, I'll look for these little balls that I'm describing were in the top of the waterfall when I crossed the Zambezi all those years ago. Had the opportunity to walk across when it was in dry season. These sections, I'm going to look at this in more detail, but probably I'll put some comparative images in the blog. I'll put some comparative images to the Binger and Huang and our own, where if you remember we have a circular section in the middle and then we have 2 spiral arms coming off. And obviously aluminium's got a much lower yield strength, so I'd imagine that the spiral arms don't have the intensity to cut steel in the same way that they do aluminium. And but I'm interested to see if the micron scale of this central core section is similar in order to the one that we see in what do you call it, in the aluminium sections. Okay, and here's these 2 triangular cut throughs. So maybe I'm gonna have a quick look to see if I can find LeClair's paper. Now that we have this on screen, give me a second. I'm going to see if I can find LeClair's presentation. I didn't want to do that, did I? Well, I've got this piece of from LeClair, and these circles, if you've got water coming through a circle, this is something I've never really discussed before, and I don't know whether LeClair did this intentionally. But if you've got water coming through a circular cut through, and this is in the case of an aluminium sheet, it will force a toroid, okay, which will force a coherent structure, okay. And as you know, if you get toroids in fluid dynamics, and you can see these smoke rings hitting each other. When two toroids hit each other, they will produce smaller toroids, okay, that come off at different angles. And so when you know this, and you know that he took this aluminium sheet and he rolled it like in a Swiss roll, you will have toroids hitting other toroids, and this will lead to the production of maybe some clustering. And so I don't know whether he considered this, but I can tell you I can understand this, and I'm telling you this now. And the other interesting thing is, if you go and look at Ryushin Omasa's patent for his Omasa gas producer, he has the vibration planes going like this. You know, I've done very clear videos of that. And then the water that's coming off the flow of the water is then going through the electrolysis plates, and the electrolysis plates look a little bit like this. And so they will be creating tori, and so forcing coherence. Anyway, what you're seeing here is a diamond film, a glassy diamond film, that he said is synthesized from the water. And this is why I'm saying you're seeing carbon. And that's why I believe Binja and Huang is seeing carbon. And so wherever this plume came from, down here, there was a point of resonance that was just always working. And so it was really doing a lot of transmutation. Okay, so that's one thing from LeClair. But I'll see if I can find anything else that is more relevant. Okay, so I've actually got more on LeClair's experiment here. This is from a page that was taken down. And this is Nanospire, Cavitation Processing Solutions. I have spent 3 years in the past working at the Office of Naval Research, so the Navy Research Labs. And if we go through this, you can see that he saw all these transmuted elements, and he's got the strange radiation tracks, and he's got the scars. These are the different chips that came out from the aluminium, and in these chips you've got all the elements of the periodic table. These are emissions from the chips when put on a petri dish or something. These are a microscope look at some of the perforations in the aluminium, and he's saying that the chips, these things, are synthesized on the edge, and this is the point of maximum cavitation. Okay, so you can imagine that this edge is probably not too dissimilar to the edges of these structures in here. Okay. So here you can see more of the aluminium foil from LeClair's work, and these are the diamond films that have occurred on his aluminium. These are more of the chips. These are the stellar synthesis that came from it. He's done another close-up here. These are, for me, this is a figure of 8. Okay, all right. This is a ring structure, and I believe that this may be a coherent structure that went on here. He's saying that it's this water crystal that's orbiting around, I think. So here's what I mean by this Swiss roll. So he has a pressure drop in just a pump system, and this goes into a PVC pipe. And you can see it's this perforated aluminium. And you can actually buy this stuff from the hardware shop for like making stuff, right? Okay. And you can see how it fits into the overall structure. So this is the PVC pipe. You've got the aluminium foil here. Sorry, aluminium is actually quite thick. And this is another PVC section. And again, he's got toroids. So he's got big toroids forcing big toroids through little toroids. So, and then you're going to get all kinds of toroidal structures as it goes to this massive pressure drop. And you get this cavitation process. So this is just, but I must warn people that 1 hour running of this nearly killed him and his partner because the intensity of the radiation flux. Now, he believes that the radiation is that did the damage was from the heavy transuranic isotopes fissioning back. There will have been some of that playing a role, and there was a neutron flux. But also, I believe that there would be an intense amount of strange radiation coming off. So you can see it here in his garage lab. And that's how it's set up. And there's another experiment here. Another experiment here. So this is literally stuff from your hardware store. A pump that you can get from the hardware store. You know, you end up having a pressure drop. And the pressure drop goes into a bucket. And the pressure drop through this aluminium foil creates these cavitation. And I'm just told you exactly why I believe that the circular holes, which are also in Ryushin Omasa's awarded patent, which is now free to use because it was from 2001, for his Omasa gas. So there we go. This hasn't actually got the bit that I wanted in it. So which is showing you the triangle cuts. So maybe I actually have that somewhere. Maybe I don't. No, I don't have it. But what I'll do is I'll put it onto the MFMPs. I'll put this onto the. I'll put all of the Omasa stuff onto quantumheat.org. And I'll also put onto remoteview.icu the image that I'm referring to with this triangular section that was cut out of this material. So let me go back to our working drive, wherever it was. Do I not have that there? Oh, mate, maybe I've got it in here. Yes, I think I've got it in here. Okay, so I'll get it all in the one. So this is the cavitation spot, cavitation bubble doing its cavitation thing. I'll see if I can find this structure. So here's a polygonal hole cut in. And you can see that it has this boundary area, something similar to what we saw just now. This is the vortical structure coming in from the cavitation bubble. Okay, so here we go. And now this actually is in paper. And this is the triangular mark of carbon. Or maybe it's carbonized the paper. So I'm just going to blow my nose again. Excuse me. I don't want to drip on myself. You can see the hexagonal structure over here. This is kind of like a hexagonal structure. We've got a hexagonal structure here. And then there's the triangular structure over here. So the interesting thing is he says here, the water crystal and nanospire ink, cavitation water crystal, molecular structure, and proposed Brown's gas seed. And proposed brown gas seed. So he's saying that there's this triangular structure, hexagonal structure, and maybe if you had one section of it, one sixth of it, you would have something that would leave a triangular mark. Okay, so that is possibly what's going on there. These are all the elements they saw synthesized, which is most of the elements. Neptunium, plutonium, not a lot. Americium, Berkeley, Californium, yeah, uranium. What they did see is these fission products. So this is a typical fission type of products, and what they observed. Okay. So yeah, basically I'm referring to these triangular sections down here. Okay, so it would be nice to go into this and take a better image of this triangular cut. And like he observed a lot of the carbonization, it could be that the carbon is coming from that. And I would be interested to see if these blobs here and here and here and here are sulfur rich. They might just be, in fact, looking at that, it's probably copper. This is interesting. There's almost a triangular structure here. It's just like a shadow of itself. Some of these other ones here, they've got kind of the spiral bits going on them. One here, kind of here and here. Okay, not quite as good as the other one. Kind of here and here. But this one is nice and clear. This one's got one here and here. So you can see this repeating type of structure. Again, we've got a triangular structure here. Typically, it's a hexagonal or triangle, but it's these vortical structures that fascinate me. Again, this one here, it looks like it's got a bit there and there. This one's got a bit cut out here and a bit cut out there. A group of three. This is interesting. It's got a group of three, and it's got maybe some triangular structures in the middle that's not so clear. Okay, anyway. So close up. So this is a bit closer up on that bit that was sulfur rich down in this bottom corner. Don't know why it's not allowing me to zoom. Why is it not allowing me to zoom? Okay. Right. This is with secondary electron detection. This is a mix. This shows more. You can see really that this is a cavity. You can see that it's cut out here, it's cut out here. Very, very clearly. Oh, why is that not letting me zoom in when I don't have it there? Okay. I might want to look at these three balls in the bottom of this circular cut here and see if we see some sulfur content in there. And that is that. That is the review of the data of the steel vibrator plate from Ryushin Omasa and the very quick review of the palladium. Most of the elements we see in both cases are the elements that were either on the vibrator plates themselves as they were manufactured, or in the solutions that were in the experiment that was conducted. However, two features stands out. One, in the vibrator plate steel, it would appear that in the this one, in the ends of these, here and here, there is a blob here, and there is a blob here in the central part of this arm going out here, and the central part of this one coming out in this vector. And when we look at that, it has sulfur in there, which is not in any of the elements that were used in the experiment. Sulfur has been observed to be formed in ball lightning, and it gives this pungent sort of smell when a ball lightning explodes, and we have observed the production of sulfur with Omasa gas on 10 yen coin. And the theory is that that is 2 oxygen 16s, either from the water or dissolved oxygen in the water. So either from the oxygen in the H2O or from dissolved oxygen in the water, or well, basically from there goes to sulfur 32. So I believe that this is fusion energy that might have been driving some of this cavitation process. And I've got a close-up, I think, here of that. So you can see, if I go into here, this is at the center of this bit that's going out. So maybe I'll want to investigate the morphology of this structure a little bit more and see if we can find, again, here, this is as it was. And it looks like something happened here, and then it moved to here, and it did something here, and then it moved to here, and it did something here. And we see the same sort of things on the ball burn sample from John Hutchison. Okay. And then in the sample of the palladium, we saw, in my view, what I would suggest is the first nickel collapsed, nickel and oxygen collapsed wave function of an exotic vacuum object. But we can't be sure because it might have been produced in some maybe intense electrical plating process. But either way, it could be the collapsed wave function of a nickel-based exotic vacuum object sphere. It's of the right scale for typical ones that we've seen. And it is spherical, albeit by the crenellations, which are slightly different in this case. But it does pander to this self-organization process that definitely seems to be some, in all of its beauty, it seems to have some sort of organic self-organization going on. There's some regularity in its irregular nature. Okay, so and it's clearly magnetic. Okay, but it doesn't have, in this experiment, it doesn't appear with the analysis that's been done in this part of it, any elements that weren't in the starting materials. But for me, the day was a complete huge win because before I came here, some people answered my calling earlier today, and I got sent this paper on the what is it? Bagels. The Bagel Game by Q.E. Zverblish here. And it's wonderful to have this phrase complete my journey in terms of demonstrating that this 3-tier structure here is a real thing, and that I believe that it is the basic representation of a 3-tier, but otherwise what would end up being a completely fractal structure that was derived from these images from the analysis of the Hutchison MFMP fracture sample, and that's the 2nd tier, and this is the 3rd tier, and that gave us the Evo. Not this one. Dear. I'll get the Evo image. Not that one. This one. It gave us this structure, which is a 48 one derived from the Hutchison sample, and that this is your 1st tier, which is one of the subsections of this torus, and that is this equivalent here in this model, and that then they group together into torus, and that is equivalent to this level, and then these tori group into a 3rd tier, and that's a 1, 2, 3 as he calls it, and that is this structure. And what he argues in this paper is that this is supported by Maxwell's theory, and that it leads to something that can produce a persistent electromagnetic and possibly gravitic structure that is able to self-support itself in leaving a phantom, and that this is effectively something that can, at a next order of magnitude, capture energy from the vacuum effectively, and that it has correlations within how plasma is confined within stellarators for installations for studying thermonuclear fusion. So they expect that something that could do this could lead to thermonuclear fusion, and that it has correlations in DNA molecules. It's all the same thing, as above, so below, fractal structures. And he had a lovely diagram in here of how it, you've got a base level, 2 levels, 3 levels, up towards infinity. And I believe that that is what we are seeing in our structures that we are generating, where they have these levels that they go to. And so that was that. That was a complete unexpected bonus today. As we've shown in the Vega Valley behind us, the structures can form into, in my view, all forms of carbon allotropes. So they be what you've got here is you've got yin yangs, and then they come out and they form a capped tube. This is a capped tube, and in the center you have magnetic core. Yeah, that's it. So there we go. So I'm going to see if there's any other comments on here. I'm going to go back and work down, so I don't know where we got to. It's just, in these documents, it's literally saying this is how the structure is that you would want as a perfect structure to forming plasma, to confine plasma to do fusion. And it just does it. Nature just does it auto-magically. I'm just arranging a few things. Daniel Foster. I don't believe Earthlings will ever be allowed to know this stuff on a curriculum scale. Terraform Venus so that we have a curriculum there. Yeah, why not? Clearly, that was classified research. It was classified research from the Soviet period. I've got friends that weren't even born when they established that. Corky goes, diamonds on the soles of her shoes. That's what beats these walking blues. Diamonds on the soles of her shoes. Well, Stephen, definitely coherent matter could be used. You can create coherent matter by longitudinal sound. So you could have, one of the proposed methods for cutting holes through granite is to take a copper tube. We know they had copper tube, and then use sound. And if the sound is coherent, it's going through a linear structure and it's beating like that, we know that that is an interface, and that will produce coherence at that point. So particularly if you've got something that's got quartz in there, you have the opportunity to create coherence. Yeah, Crypto Alchemist, with the exotic vacuum objects, cavitation is the worst. You can create a device relatively simple on a lathe with a standard electric motor and just tap water and kill yourself in an hour. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily die in an hour, but the exposure might kill you within a year or so from cancer, but only because of an hour's exposure. And you need to go and look at a new type of penetrating radiation on the MFMP's YouTube channel to have a more detail about the metrics about how that causes cancer and so forth. So, at Bob, what detector did LeClair use for elemental analysis? I think he used a range of detectors. Like I say, he was working for 2 years in the Naval Research Labs. So they have all the equipment you could possibly imagine there. I mean, because he's looking at every element isotope, he would have had to have used probably some octopole, probably mass spectrometer as one method. The Cheshire Cat was an Evo, yeah, that's probably quite true. Okay, so Thor's asking, can I host a Q&A for the MFMP viewers? I thought absolutely. After I did that Q&A the other day, I thought I should probably do one for MFMP. So yes, that's definitely a thing I want to do. I think it's now is the right time. What you're seeing right here on this page is the culmination of 10 years of work that has derived and shown in physical form the structure that is able to capture matter regardless of how strong that matter thinks it is. It will always yield to the will of an exotic vacuum object in the right level of coherence. It will always yield to the will. And the fact that this has sort of a record in classified Soviet era research, which was never officially released, and that actual thing is supported by Maxwell theory right towards to the nth degree, and that is something that could cause fusion. In this one paper, what you have on this page is just for me, this is scientific beauty. this little composition here is like, this is derived from bothering to look at what nature did, and then seeing what nature actually did in physical form, but the cutting tool rather than the impression. And then this is the theory based on, I can't see it, I haven't got any evidence of it, but I predict that this is what is the thing that's doing it, and the maths adds up. And so you have science is about something being repeatable, consistent, and predictable. And what you have on this is proof, theory, everything, the whole thing, the whole package, everything. We are at the dawn of an old age. Yeah, I think these are happening below Earth. I think not coal so much, but oil and gas could well be produced using exotic vacuum objects. And I talked about this. I've talked about this in the past, but I talked about it during one of my recordings of my analysis in the last couple of weeks on the SEM-EDS. About how the Russians have this belief that the oil and gas is produced abiotically, and when you know that the key things that an exotic vacuum object will kick out is protons and hydrogen, well, that's hydrocarbons, isn't it? And under pressure that will form. And so methane is the most likely thing to form, and under the right amounts of different conditions you would get different length hydrocarbons forming. And so there you go. Maybe there's some truth in it, and it is a renewable source that our planet makes for the planet. Okay, it's just nature is just such an amazing thing. It's just such an amazing thing. Self-organization is what's holding everything together. Yes, Gordon. So Gordon says, "Oh, I'm off to dream about bagels. I have no doubt with cream cheese and salmon." Damn it! I'm gonna have to have one tomorrow. I'm gonna have to. You know what? I'm gonna see where I can get a bagel and have some cream cheese and salmon. I might even take a photo for you guys. That's gonna be my lunch tomorrow. Okay, crypto, excellent. He's suggesting a stream together. Actually, the demonstration or the experiment that's shown in this paper here is something that people can do. I mean, you're trying to fake a real object on a macro scale. Obviously, the wavelengths available to structures here that we're seeing on this page here, when the overall scale is what, that's 8 microns across. You can go to higher frequencies with something that's 8 microns across. When his device up here is the diameter of a ping pong ball. So at 30 hertz, he can produce this effect with something the size of a ping pong ball. You can probably go to a higher frequency with this, and maybe we can derive some tuned frequency for certain structures that would be advantageous, and that's something to think about. Yeah, well, Corky will come to replicators again, I'm sure. I've done propulsion a few times, but you know, more importantly, you need to shield for the action of gravity. And if you differentially shield from it, then it just moves in the vector of the most shielding, if you know what I mean. Okay, so this was meant to be, it was genuinely meant to be a review of 2 quick SEM sessions, which had 2 interesting features in my mind. One is a confirmation of fusion, and one is a new potential macro exotic vacuum object coherent matter cluster collapse structure. That's what I thought I was going to present tonight. It was going to be relatively boring, but with 2 reasonably interesting points. One confirmatory about the sulfur production in these systems from oxygen, and the other one a new structure. But it became so much more. And for me, it's been a deep pleasure to be able to present this paper today. And like I say, I will first thing in the morning, I'll get these posted up so people will have an opportunity to translate them as they wish. But I will try as soon as possible to get a good translation of this out of the door in a remastered LaTeX document. And some of that probably will be directly referenced in the technical book that will go alongside the Vega Valley. But I can't really discuss the structure here that we see here that was found in the Vega Valley and several other. When I go on the SEM, I'm going to go and try and capture the other structures that I saw, which are different levels of numbers of tori around the ring in other areas. I want to get those in higher detail, this kind of level of detail. But that will be in the book, and I can't really discuss getting to understand that this might be something of interest if we observed it without referring to the work of John Hutchison. So that will be in the technical book about how it came into being, this level of understanding. But it's not surprising that they classified this research, the Soviets, because it's the key to everything. It really is how, in my view, the entire universe organizes itself and goes through its birth, creation, and destruction cycle, and basically it's the God's toolbox. It is the God's toolbox. It's the wheel within a wheel within a wheel. And with that, I will say thank you, good night, buenas noches, dobra noc, buena sera. It's been a pleasure.